There are something like 680. I have honestly lost count until the 2024 presidential election. I am so sorry about that graphic. It is indeed the stuff of nightmares, but there are a couple of reasons it's appropriate. First of all, either Donald doesn't know what the word clairvoyant means. That's where my money goes. Or there's something new about him we don't know. He's clairvoyant. The other reason is that there is a woman in New Zealand who reads tarot cards. I don't even know how I stumbled across this thing. First of all, Dahlia, Brian, Jen, I don't normally like say hi to everybody because it's, we all know each other, but I so appreciate your being here on Tuesday in between. We just had Hanukkah and Christmas and New Year's is coming, and people are all over the place. So I really appreciate your Festivus, Kwanzaa. I think we're in the middle of Kwanzaa, so we've got all sorts of. And by the way, just for those who I'm sure none of the people watching this, but for those who get offended by the whole happy holidays nonsense, there are like 14 holidays going on simultaneously this time of year. So saying happy holidays is just being polite and inclusive, which clearly Republicans hate. So there you go. Anyway, I stumbled across this YouTube video. I can't remember her name, Leslie something, Rodriguez maybe, from New Zealand, who reads tarot cards. And for reasons beyond my comprehension, she read tarot cards after she had heard about my appeal that I'd, whatever the word is I'm looking for, submitted an appeal to my case, which my judge had thrown out. So we're appealing to higher court. Whatever. It's going to be a while. In the meantime, we can read tarot cards about what's going to happen. Because as the great Robbie Kaplan said, that's as good as an indicator as anything else. So we thought we would, in the spirit of the holidays, do something a little light before we dive into the other just dire things going on in the world. We'll show you a little bit of this quite compelling video, and it's compelling and so compelling that I've decided to take up tarot card reading. All right. If we have it queued up and ready to go, let's check it out.
Don't like it. Okay, now putting these back. Let's look at Mary Trump. Don't you love her? Yeah.
Aw.
So she calls a spade, and she's very upfront with her podcast and
the nerds.
She has interesting people on too. But if you remember, the basic story is she was ripped off from her inheritance when her father died, not just by the Yeti, but by the Yeti's sister. I think the one who's the
Yeti.
Yeah. Let's not forget, the whole family is pretty awful. So her argument now legally is she was forced. She was coerced. And one of the ways they coerced her was to threaten to withdraw medical insurance for her nephew, who was very, very ill. And she was only young then, and she buckled under the pressure. And now she's saying the agreement shouldn't stand. I was coerced. And she must have something to back that up. And let's have a look how that case will pan out. Go, Mary. Go, Mary.
You have a fan.
Awesome.
Love her.
She's clairvoyant. She heard us.
Look at the cards.
It's in progress.
I need her to zoom into one of my classes at law school.
Temperance, that's not bad.
I need to find out if it's going to be -6 here tomorrow.
I do.
After this,
So the first card
tarot cards work as well as doctrine.
this was putting all the ducks in a row, because my glasses. Sorry, they're driving you insane because they're
Totally.
crooked. She's done her homework on this. She has a good lawyer.
The
It could be a
best.
team, but a very good lawyer, probably a woman at the top of the legal chain,
Robbie
who has
Kaplan.
said, you've got a case.
Hey, Robbie, it's you.
Knights are offers and opportunities. There's an opportunity to win this money back with these pentacles. Temperance, which is very similar to the Justice card in many ways, and about balance and restoring harmony and all those things.
All of this is
Major
true, by the way.
arcana, followed by another major arcana, the world. So God knows, we all know these legal things take years. So we're probably looking at 3 years or something till a result. But it will be the end of a huge symbolic cycle for her, because I think she's fighting this not just for herself. For whatever reason, she's much more altruistic and out there and compassionate than the rest of her entire extended family.
Just saying nothing.
But it will bring
That's definitely
her some
true.
relief.
Oh, you saying
For her
that's a low bar?
who had a very hard time growing up as, I think, the eldest son of the truly hideous Fred Trump. And I think it's always wrangled, and I think she has a very good opportunity here.
Yeah.
Oh, bless you, Mary. Now, I will look at Meghan and Harry.
Okay.
Meghan and Harry?
That's
You're ahead of
like-
Meghan and Harry. That's pretty good.
I know. I
Well-
love her use of the word wrangled.
Wait, is she gone?
Yeah, she's gone.
That was
That's
it.
What was it?
Let's
Okay.
not get greedy.
It was a
Okay,
video.
okay.
It was a video Cliff. It was something Mary found on YouTube that we all needed.
Oh,
Yeah, she wasn't
yeah,
a
I came in
special
late.
guest.
I thought she was
Cliff.
actually here. I was going to be like,
No,
can you tell me
no, that's
if it's
her.
going to be -6 degrees in Cincinnati next week, so I know what to wear, because this shit's killing me.
I would just count on it, but I am
Yes,
taking up
count on
tarot
it.
cards. So if
Fair.
I get around to it, I would just prepare for the
I was
worst
waiting for it to
because
turn
it's
up the
so-
fool, and it would look like Don.
Well, that graphic, our YouTube graphic, is definitely going to be one of my. I'm going to design my own tarot cards. And that's gonna be,
You know,
that's
you know
gonna
what I
be-
wanted to
buy
ask her,
those.
Mary? I wanted to
What?
ask her if the next time I go on a trip with my family to see my mom and others in New York, if I'm going to go into an Italian restaurant and literally have Marla Maples sit down at the table next to me.
That's right. There
Because-
was a close encounter. So I got a text from Cliff. Excuse me. That he's like, I'm in a restaurant. I thought you were in Ohio. So I'm like, that's really random that you're in a restaurant with Marla Maples.
Nobody comes here. Come
Turns
on.
out, I know. I was like, why would she do that? Anyway, turns out
Honey Bunch
it's
does.
in a New York City restaurant sitting near Marla Maples. And I texted, she and I always really got along. She always treated me better than everybody else in my family. Like, we weren't, really close friends or anything, but we always did get along. And I always felt horribly about how they treated her. And we spent like a reasonable amount of time together on those few occasions. I went down, God, I can't believe this was my life, to Mar-a-Lago for Easter. So Cliff, take up the rest of the story because you were actually there.
Right. So it was, I'll give them the free plug. Il Tonello, great Italian restaurant in Midtown New York. Whenever we go, my wife and my kids love it. So we go to New York a couple times a year to see my mom and other reasons. So we were there, and my wife is the one who caught it. Like, I'm sitting there, and she's like, "You're not going to believe this, but Marla Maples just sat at the table, literally right behind us." And so I'm trying to not, do the obvious stare thing, but I saw clearly it was her, and so I sent Mary a message, and Marla had always come off as nicer to me. I always sort of felt sorry. I'm like, how did she get herself into this? But I don't know, right? Like, that was my opinion from, like, anybody else's from the outside. I had no. So long story short, Mary told me this stuff and said, say hi for me. I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm going to have that opportunity. But walking out, I assume she just does this when anybody looks her way, because she's probably so used to people sort of looking at her and being like, wait, is that? Because I don't think she would have recognized me from anywhere, but she gave me this smile and said hello. And that was my opening. So I said, hey, hi, how are you? Whatever. And I said, I'm pretty good friends with Mary Trump. And she and whoever was at the table with her smiled, big smiles immediately. like friendly. And like she just wanted me to say hi, and that she always loved, really enjoyed you and got along with you great. I think I may have even said better than the other members of the family. And Marla leaned forward and was like, she's like, that's so funny. I always felt exactly the same way about Mary. Please tell her I say hi.
That's really
I
cool.
love this love fest.
Nice.
Yeah.
This is so nice.
And there's your random encounter in a midtown. I mean, it's a good restaurant and whatever, but there's a million good restaurants in New York. And
Yes, there are.
I was there for 3 days. So,
In
that
a restaurant for 3 days? I mean, no wonder you
listen, I would live at that restaurant. It's so good. Seriously. I mean, I start looking like Jabba the Hutt every pasta dish is its own.
Mary,
But
you got to get them to sponsor a show now. I feel like they have gotten really good press today.
They have, and so
They
has our
Say the
tarot
name
card reading
slowly.
friend.
What
Il
is the name of the
Tonelli.
restaurant?
it's Il Tonello.
Okay.
So I think it's TINIELLO. It's on 50 in the 50s between 5th and 6th Avenue.
Huh.
And it's absolutely delicious.
54th, right?
All
That's
right.
about right. 54th, 55th, somewhere
So
around there.
south of the park.
So thank you to
Huh?
our sponsor. Actually, they're not.
I know now that we've
so
done
we're
that,
gonna
we
move
should
on.
hit them up. Yeah.
But it's always nice when
Can I
first
just
of
say
all, when-
I'd like a bucatini. You can just mail it right to me. I'll rewarm it. It's fine.
No.
That's fair.
It's always nice when some random tarot card reading person from New Zealand it says such nice things to you, and it's also really nice. Bucatini, that's like a thick noodle.
I like it because then all
You
the
want it in the
yummy-
mail? That seems wrong.
Okay.
Anyway, I'll get
Maybe a
you
wet
some
cannoli.
cannolis. Anyway, so and it's also nice when you find out that somebody you haven't seen for years kind of feels the same way, because she could have said, oh god, she's an asshole, or whatever she could have said. I don't know. So that's really nice.
And I'll just say quickly, she could have also, just been like a fake whatever.
Mhm.
But the genuine reaction when I said your name, because she wasn't expecting your name,
Right.
she probably was expecting Donald or whatever.
Right.
The genuine smile from both her and the woman, I don't know who it was who was with her, it seemed pretty natural. So I really think that felt nice. It was a nice,
Yeah, that's great. And she was always quite genuine, and she was really young. So
Yeah.
And what she wore to whatever wedding that was, her daughter's wedding recently, was very elegant. I don't usually comment on people's looks, but it was a wedding, and she
and that cannot have been easy for her to be among those people. So
no, and she
there's
looked
that
like
too.
a very elegant mother of the bride, very natural.
I think we've had enough of the hard-hitting news for today, so maybe we should just shift gears.
Seems fair.
Although there has been a suggestion, Dahlia suggested that Jen invent a bucatini martini, which doesn't.
It's
sound
been
like a
done though.
good
There's like
idea.
vodka sauce, right? Isn't that a kind of pinkish red sauce?
Yes, with pancetta, which is not. Okay, so with
Okay, we'll
olives,
move on.
put some olives in there would be good.
Yum.
Anyway, so this is our very last Nerd Avenger until 2023. I don't know about the rest of you guys. I'm so eager to put this fucking year in the rearview mirror. It just amazes me how every single year since 2016 I've been saying, well, next year can't possibly be worse.
Stop saying it. Stop saying it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it. I am not saying it this year. I'm
good.
just going to be quietly hopeful, and also try not to be not cynical. Jen, what was the phrase that Waj used to describe my attitude towards?
It was
January
actually
6th
mine.
meeting?
It was
Oh,
mine.
I so
He
apologize
repeated it
for the
but fine.
misattribution.
It was cautiously pessimistic.
Yeah, and that's
Ryan, you
that-
liked it the first time you heard it too.
Yeah, I have to be completely honest. I think it's fair, but it's a little disappointing because I've
think it's
always been an
brilliantly
optimist, and the last 6 years have really challenged that my ability to maintain that position about anything. But and also just to mention, we had, I think, a great time at the live on stage Nerd Adventures in LA at Dynasty Typewriter. So thank you to everybody who came out. I think it went as well as we could have hoped it would. Yeah, it was great. So we definitely plan to be doing more of those. We'll keep you posted. But that day, some of you might have seen that we had a live stream of the final January 6th committee hearings, and the report. Maybe somebody will explain to me why they released it at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night, but maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know. And I want to talk about, so we talked about the hearing. I want to talk about the report. Like, some of us haven't actually read it 3 times, like some people we know, Jen Taub. But I don't think we need, I think we've read enough summaries and enough takeaways to get the gist of it. So, Jen, because I think you actually at least printed it out, if didn't read the whole thing cover to cover. And that's dedication. That's a lot of paper and printer ink. I want to start with your overarching sense of it, but like, what were the most salient things that were missing from the report? Because that's something I've been reading about that I've found disturbing.
Having printed it out, or actually, speaking of sponsors, no,
All
our,
845
my local print shop is called Paradise Copies, and it's great because they printed double-sided, black and white, and put it in the spiral bounds. It had to go into 2. Now, it would be less expensive for me just to wait and get the official printout, but then you have to like break the spine, and there's something nice about marking up. I do this when it's something important, and then I have it on my shelf with my notes and my Post-its and all that stuff. But having not finished reading it, I'm only going to speculate based on what I heard that what's missing is any kind of mention of, I probably could search through it. I don't think Ginny Thomas is probably even mentioned in this.
He's not. 0 times. Yep.
I think that while there is more than one person who is the focal point of this beyond Donald Trump, there are others, obviously John Eastman and others who are mentioned and for whom the referral is made. What I feel is most likely missing is the emphasis on the kind of danger of how this has been normalized, and I'll say the it in a second, and accepted and propagated by the Republican establishment, in that what justifies taking arms against an authority, at least in American history, is tyranny, right? And so the big lie, the denial that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris fairly and squarely and legally won the election, that big lie, which is still supported by people who are in office and some reelected and new people elected to the Congress and the Senate.
And running for office.
That is part of, and that's Donald Trump, who is still head of the party. That's still when you see the House GOP tweeting stuff out with Donald's picture. The big lie made it a necessity for many people who thought themselves as patriots to resist the peaceful transition of power. And until that's actually front and center denounced, because that is what has to happen, because the name of the committee is this, the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the Capitol. But it's not just the attack on the Capitol. Thank goodness they stepped back and took a bigger frame. But it's an attack on our democracy. It really should be the January 6th committee to investigate the big lie, because that's what is missing to me, the framing.
And Dahlia, that seems quite dangerous to me. And it doesn't make sense. But keeping in line with other things missing, and expand on whatever you think is most relevant. In addition to Ginny Thomas, I don't believe that there was enough about the corruption at the Secret Service, for example, or the failures of the intelligence community prior to January 6th. And one of the, we've talked about this a lot, one of the biggest challenges we face, and one of the still unanswered questions, is how does this country survive if we are incapable of policing ourselves? How does a government survive if people who are active seditionists and who supported an insurrection are allowed to continue, not just to, skate free, but serve in the government?
So first of all, happy holidays and
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
always fun
Yeah.
to be together. Warm, fuzzy feeling of imminent democratic collapse. I think a couple of things. I want to reflect, Mary, on the very first sentiment you expressed, which is things are ostensibly getting better, right? We're in the Biden era. Trump was not elected. We now have accountability. Like, why does everything feel in some sense more perilous? And I think it's what Jen just so sort of exquisitely said, which is because the big lie gets bigger and bigger. It doesn't get smaller and smaller. Nothing that is meant to constrain it constrains it. And if you're like watching the comedy stylings of George Santos in recent days, like it's clear that like overt lying, fabrication, grifting, every single thing that would have been disqualifying, right? This is your Roy Moore point. 3, 4, 5 years ago, now actually means the party rallies around you and defends you. And if people can't see the sort of gap between creeping accountability on one hand and just what is being permitted and normalized, I think you both used that word, then I think that's kind of the space we're in. And it's the reason we're all on fire all the time is how do you sort of express this sentiment that even with the accountability, quote unquote, of this, really scrupulous 840 whatever page report, the thing that it is purportedly investigating and smoking out is actually just living in Kerry Lake right now. Like it is just continuing to seemingly thwart, any systems of accountability. And I think it's the gap between those two things that is really just very both exhausting personally, but also I think that part of why when I wrote at the end of last week about why Clarence and Ginny Thomas were going to skate here, and people are like, but look at what they did do. But what they did do is fantastic, but it doesn't help if one of the 9 people on the Supreme Court refuses to recuse himself in January 6 cases while his wife was ostensibly, helping John Eastman do and Mark Meadows do what they sought to do. So I think it's that cognitive dissonance that's just really hard. How can you be winning small and losing big? And maybe the other thing I would say is, and I didn't read the whole report, but I will say this. I was really struck reading the depositions of some of the worst, the Alex Jones and Charlie Kirk and Nick Fuentes, that you really get that sense, and y'all tell me if you agree or disagree, when they're actually called on under oath to swear to things, they freak out, right? Like they actually, all of the bluster and the bravado, Alex Jones is like not even sure about his name in his deposition. He's like fumbling over his name. Charlie Kirk literally takes the fifth about his like age.
Yep.
And so I just like, there is some satisfaction in seeing that they're total cowards in the face of actual lying under oath and actual repercussions. And I don't know if that gives me, optimism or like cautious pessimism, but it is really interesting to see that when they have a moment to act out, they choose not to when they know they're going to be lying under oath. And the cowardice on display in those depositions is really staggering. So I'll stop there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, Dahlia, we saw it with Sean Hannity in the Dominion voting systems. Is that what that lawsuit is? He's like, oh, no, I knew the big lie was bullshit all along. Okay, well, you're not going to tell that to your millions of viewers, are you, though? And Dahlia, I just want to follow up with one thing. Yes, it is indeed a problem that Clarence Thomas won't recuse himself and that there's no mechanism to force him to do so. What's more troubling, because how could we expect somebody like Clarence Thomas to do anything ethical or just? He's a corrupt, he's just corrupt and vile, as are many of his colleagues on the court. But if his behavior and if his wife's behavior isn't enough to light a fire under Democrats to reform the court in significant and far-reaching ways, then what do we do? Oh, well, they're on the court already. I mean, it was the same thing with Don. Well, he's in the Oval Office. What are you going to do? Well, they're on the court. What are you going to do? And that's what troubles me more than thinking we're at the mercy of people like Clarence Thomas deciding to do the right thing, because that's a fool's game. Anyway, so Cliff, yes, they all tell the truth under oath. And still, though, where does that get us?
Well, I mean, I find it interesting. I'll start with Dahlia's point about the cowardice part, right? Yeah. Sometimes people think that like we're just saying this stuff because we want to be cruel or because we want to rip on them, which I do, I admit. But because I mean, think of Josh Hawley to
must win.
And think of don't pick
Trace of fire present.
I cannot wait to read that book.
Think of pot-bellied, Ted Cruz when it gets cold with pulling his suitcase to Cancun, and think of Donald when there's a couple protests outside and he has to go down to the bunker. I mean, they're the biggest bunch of fucking cowards, all of them. And that's the thing that is it's infuriating about all of it, is how performative it all is. And it just is a lesson in how effective propaganda is, how easily people are fooled by these faux bravado acts, which is why, to me, the most dangerous thing going forward, and I will get to very quick, like to January 6th, but the most dangerous thing is the Republican Party realizes this. They realize the mainstream media won't call them on this, and they realize that people are impressed sadly, by a lot of the same things Donald Trump is impressed by. So get Mehmet Oz, he was on TV. He must be somebody. Get Herschel Walker. He was a football player. This new lunatic down who's elected in Florida, who they're calling Luna is her name, which seems perfect. I know it means moon, but it should be Looney. They're calling her like the Latina Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was an Instagram influencer. They're just now going after people that are good at performing like they're smart and tough and whatever. And it's all BS. Now, the part that bothers me the most, I will say, about the January 6th thing, and I think you guys got to some of this, is nothing for any members of Congress. I mean, we know for a fact now that numerous members of Congress were heavily involved in what Donald Trump was doing. Scott Perry, Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan's going to chair if they can pick a leader, which is still a question, but if they can do it in the end, he's going to chair the Judiciary Committee. I mean, and he was involved in trying to overthrow our country. And like that, to me, I mean, history tells us this. Abraham Lincoln kicked a bunch of people out of the Senate who refused to accept his election for a reason. And I get the mechanism isn't easy, but they actually can kick them out, and 2/3 would have to vote to bring them back in, is my understanding. But again, we're Democrats, we're cautious, we refuse to do this, and we literally have the enemies inside the gates. We have at least a dozen, probably more like 3 dozen House members, and I'd say about a dozen senators who are active traitors to this country, and we know it, and they're going to run committees or just be there. And I mean, that's the biggest failure to me, because how do you continue with that knowledge? How do people, trust them? I mean, if you're Democrats in there and you have to trust these people with information about yourself or whatever, I mean, in any case, that's my problem.
But that was precisely my point. How do you have a democracy that's run by traitors who want nothing more than to destroy our democracy? I mean, it's just absurd on its face. And Brian, it kind of feels like we're at this we're like at the end of Reconstruction, when there was all of this potential and we kept making the wrong decisions and empowering our enemies, who then basically won. The South won the Civil War, I hate to say,
because we allowed it, as you said.
Yes, the North just didn't have the political wherewithal to make common cause with the people who'd been most wronged, and decided it was more expedient to allow the traitors to join the union that they had tried so hard to destroy, and now they're trying to destroy it again. And I know you have some stuff to say before we move on, but I just wanted to say that. And Cub reporter Brian Karem has read the entire report.
I'm a huge
Just
nerd.
give me. You can go ahead. I had to turn off my camera. I accidentally stepped on my cat, and I need to. She was under my desk, and I didn't know
won't
that.
even touch that line.
So well,
We've
so
all
Brian,
had those moments. Make sure she's cool.
Yeah. So you go ahead.
You're
I will.
kidding.
I will be listening, but also consoling.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, yeah, you can make the point that what this did is a direct result of what happened after Reconstruction. Everything we're going through today is you can draw a direct line to Reconstruction in the 60s, but it's in the 1860s. But if you want to take a look at this 845-page, large, long, lengthy report, and after talking to some of the people that drafted it, the idea behind this was to lop off the head of the serpent. So that's why Donald Trump was looked at more in depth than anybody else. Now, if you want to take a look at some of the pages that were dedicated, for example, Donald Trump is mentioned on 205 pages of this report. Mark Meadows, 115 pages. John Eastman, 73 pages. Mike Pence, he got the magic number, 69 pages. Not that he knows what that means. Kevin McCarthy was...
He does, as long as he's with his wife eating dinner at the time, and no one older women are there.
Oh,
Kevin McCarthy, 28
I'm sorry.
pages.
I apologize.
Jim Jordan, 15 pages. Matt Gaetz, a minor player in
Just happened.
2 pages.
Is that one page for each of the women he trafficked? Or
Clarence and Jenny Thomas were not mentioned once in 845 pages. And the method to the madness behind it, I look at it as an abrogate. You did not take your responsibility as seriously as you could or should, and that directly responds or reflects on what Mary was talking about what happened after the Civil War. They had their point was to go after Donald Trump, the head of the serpent, lop him off. That's why they did what they did. Now, you may or may not agree with it, but that's what they did and why. As far as the testimony,
can I cut you off? Sorry, Brian, but you say head of the serpent. No, the Hydra. Isn't it like the Hydra? Not a serpent?
Well,
it is now. Yes.
Well, I was actually looking at it more as the revolutionary lopping off the head of the serpent from the Revolutionary War, and there's that famous flag of chopping it up, and that's the reflection. But yes, a Hydra. But at the end of the day, and I can't remember, maybe it was you, Dahlia, who mentioned the testimony. Reading of this testimony shows you that this is all BS, that everything that they've said publicly is BS, and it's up to the Democrats and the press to hold them accountable to what they testified to in these documents, because they are very enlightening as far as how they all went along with the BS in order to feather their own nests. And if there's any condemnation of all these bit players in the press, in Congress, and everywhere, there it is. Read that and see what they say in their testimony. You will find out that they are as full of living shit as anybody I've ever met in my entire life. And there is not a one of them that deserves to be in office, and that includes the recently elected and that moron Santos, who says I'm a liar, but I'm not a criminal. I've had enough BS in Congress. I've had enough BS in government. Don't seat this guy. Kick his ass out and kick everybody out who's responsible in this 845-page document, because it's condemning, and I think everyone should try to at least read the testimony. You don't have to read all the other stuff, but please take the time and read the testimony.
Have we established definitively that George Santos is actually his name? Or
I don't even know if he's American.
I think I might be George Santos at this point. I'm not sure.
Was that like a character on West Wing or something?
Stand up.
He could be anybody.
Well, look,
I'm just upset, Mary, that they took that's like such a joke we always tell about like someone who's not so religious and they're Jew. It's not people who are practicing Jews, but like kind of only go to synagogue on the high holy days. We say like we're Jewish, and that was our fucking joke. And then he just stepped all over it.
Yeah, he at least has to become like a dentist, like in Seinfeld or something.
Catholics.
But look, the situation, for those who don't know, first of all, thanks, New York Democrats, and fuck you, Andrew Cuomo.
Yep.
Because the great tragedy of one of the great tragedies of the 2022 midterms is we lost the House because of New York State.
Yes.
Where I used to live in Nassau County, which is that district is part Nassau, part Queens, which is part of New York City. That actually the incumbent didn't run, but the Republican one beat the Democrat. And I think in Westchester County, the Democrat. I mean, it's just the absurdity is of it all is quite trying. Anyway, George Santos is the Republican congressperson now in that county, and he's lied about absolutely everything. Like, I don't even think we know what, if anything, he's ever said is true. And taking a page out of, I blame Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, for everything at this point as well. But the lesson that's been learned is, if you're a Republican, lie about everything. If you're caught, brazen your way through it. Either double down on the lies or say, well, so what? Who cares that I lied? All's fair, and something else I learned from Donald is that
it almost worked for Herschel Walker too.
Yeah, and it's winning at all costs, but it's always losing plus cheating plus lots of help from people who, as I think Dahlia said earlier in the chat, don't care about the cheating and the lying and the stealing, because they're getting their policies, they're getting their Supreme Court, they're turning back the clock to 1850, which is exactly what they want. They're accruing power. And I think we see it. So it's not that they're incapable of policing themselves. They have no interest in policing themselves. They just want the votes. And I think, as we see with people like Charlie Kirk and Sean Hannity and Alex Jones, there is nothing quite as dangerous as a coward who has been empowered, because they pay no price for their cowardice at all. And Dahlia, go ahead.
Uh-oh.
Dahlia?
I was literally... mute. One quick thing, and I think it just goes to Cliff's really smart point about how we just keep falling for this celebrity alpha male, of the moment, and it's
They're
hilarious.
not alpha males, though.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Brian.
Faux alpha male.
That George Santos is an alpha male is its own PhD thesis for someone, how this passes for, how Josh Hawley is an alpha male. Help me out. But I do want to say, I think, just to that last point you made, Mary, which is the thing I said in the chat. We keep talking on this show, and it's often Danielle who makes the point, or Waj, but about how these are massive faceless systems problems. The Electoral College is a massive, boring, faceless systems problem. The malapportioned Senate, same, And so I think part of the problem is, because we're not interested in challenges to democracy that are massive, faceless, inchoate, random, wonky problems, we just keep doing this cult of celebrity, zigzag from one to another. And it just seems to me, as long as Liz Cheney is winning on guns and winning on religion and winning on union busting and winning on, deregulating, environmental protections and all the stuff they're winning on at the Supreme Court, Clarence and Ginny Thomas are untouchable, right? And I think that part of the problem is we choose to make common cause and say, we'll take our little win. And our little win in this case is absolutely narrowing the focus to Donald Trump. And that's yet again falling for the celebrity, right? This is a game of, tearing down a celebrity, which is really profoundly different from the work of repairing an actual broken democracy.
Yeah, and that has been something that's been worrying me and all of us for at least 2 years now. That every time Donald made a misstep, every time, and the last month has just been stellar in that regard. He lost them the midterms. He Sorry, the griff thing. I mean, oh my God, the fake trading cards. His announcement that he was running was a total disaster. The January 6th committee hearing, which again made it seem like it was all his fault and his alone, and then the tax returns. All of these are opportunities for the Republicans to say, "See, it's him. It's not us. We were misled. We were mistaken. He's electoral poison." And you know, he's pathetic. So we're going to turn the page. Not that they can necessarily, because although I think it's safe to say they can't win elections with him, they'll definitely lose elections without him, I think. So because of the base and all that. That's I guess why this report is sort of it's really disappointing, because it gives the Republicans even more fuel for that tactic. Jen, go ahead. Say your thing.
Okay. So
just one though.
Here's the thing. When I was in college or law school, what? This relates.
I know, but I was like 5 when this happened. But go ahead.
Ow.
Oh, so last week,
I was like 25.
So let me just kind of frame this. When I look at someone like George Santos or Donald Trump,
I try not to, but
or any of these folks who, like George Santos says, "Oh, I have a story to tell," and then it's like, "Well, I embellished my resume." Now, it's not embellished means to kind of like decorate, make beautiful, or enhance. It doesn't mean to build out of whole cloth and lie. And there's a way, though, that the way that we kind of say, well, okay, we'll allow it or something. We can pretend. And yet, when I was younger, I remember that Bill Clinton, must have been law school or after law school, Bill Clinton made some nominations for attorney general. And one of them was Zoe Baird. Another one was Kimba Wood, who later got a judgeship. But Zoe Baird was going to be the attorney general. And then, they did some Oppo research someone did, and they came to find out that she had someone helping take care of the kids, even though her husband was a professor. And I'm thinking, why couldn't he fucking taken care of the kids? But that's an aside. That they had someone. Now I understand that, I guess, teaching is work. But anyhow, so they, anyway. Whatever. But they had a nanny, and as was the custom at that time, they just probably paid her cash.
Mm-hmm.
And they were supposed to be paying into the Social Security for her. And there was others. It wasn't as well established a process now of doing that. So it was called Nannygate because it got her dinged. It got her nomination withdrawn. And I compare that to, and this is a bipartisan objection I have, when Timothy Geithner was being nominated for Treasury Secretary and he hadn't paid his taxes. And he's like, "Oh, my bad. I'll just pay them." I just feel like this way that if you're a guy, particularly a white guy, and you just, don't do things like you don't pay your taxes or you lie about your resume, it's a fine. It's just like, "Oh, whatever, my bad. You're a fucking woman. And in order to do your job as a lawyer, because your husband won't watch the kids," I'm sure he's a nice guy. I don't mean to complain about her husband, but like, she's got to hire somebody, and the way it's done is paid cash. And I bet the woman wanted cash. There's a whole bunch of reasons why. And yes, she doesn't get to be attorney general. And anyway, I'm just feel like I was raised to believe that if you didn't cross your T's and dot your I's, you didn't deserve anything and you had no right to speak your mind. And there are so many people like that. And yet we see these other people who can just cosplay a kind of toxic masculinity. And
it's not masculinity. These are kids that were picked last for
cosplay was the operative word in that phrase, I believe.
They're not even good at that.
It doesn't. There's no such thing as a real. There are all kinds of masculinities and femininities. That's not even the point. Yes. The point is, it's like you look like a coloring book version of somebody, and everyone can say, "Well, that's what you're supposed to like appear like," and we'll just vote for you. Anyway,
I think there's like a Venn diagram here. What I would say is, so white guys like me can get away with a lot more than anybody else. But in that Venn diagram, is that also being Republican. So white Republicans get away with the most. White people get away with a lot of stuff. But then still, as long as you're willing to be a Republican, if you're Debbie Lesko from Arizona, you can go on a crime spree and still get elected to Congress. If you're Herschel Walker, you can father 14 kids and not know about them and lie about things and threaten your wife's life and still get almost become a senator. And we can go Mehmet Oz and the rest of them. So I feel like what you're saying is totally right, and I fully accept. Like white guys like me and Brian, absolutely.
Hey,
then there's a further level of being a Republican, because all the guardrails have come down at this point. Like the point I always try to bring up, to me, like a dividing line for those who are interested at all in history. In 2010, when that first Tea Party wave came, you had Mike Castle running, who had been this moderate Republican, governor of Delaware, was in favor of stem cell research, gun safety, environmental, all this stuff. And he was running against that crazy person who had to do an ad to say, "I'm not a witch." And when Mike Castle, who was a direct lineage, by the way, from Ben Franklin, which a lot of people didn't know, this guy who was his direct lineage, a liberal to moderate Republican, had been a leader in the House, when they chose her in the primary over him, that was when I knew, like, we're done. And since then, and she had been a performative type too, had been on TV shows, and that's the direction they've gone in. So it's some combo. I guess I'm just saying, Jenna, both of those things. White guys get it easier. Republicans of any kind get it even easier because their party doesn't care anymore.
Right, and to Jen's point, one of the outrages during about the Zoe Baird issue was that no man had ever been questioned about how he paid the nanny. So
great point.
Clearly, we're still dealing with many of the same issues we've always been dealing with. It's not really switching gears so much as it's kind of, hang on a second, Brian. Yep. Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
All I wanted to say was in regards to, I know we've said a lot about this 845-page report, and I know that you're disappointed in it, but I do encourage, there is enough there. If the Democrats and the press will dig into this, there is enough there for fuel for the fire for the next 2 years, but it's going to take people. 845 pages is a lot to go over.
Well, you'll be
do it.
Well,
listeners. Mary, can I just hijack your listening base here? For my new podcast called Booked Up with Jen Taub.
No, because I haven't been invited on. So no, you are not allowed to plug your podcast.
But you will be. You're in the spreadsheet.
Going to do it anyway.
You're in the spreadsheet.
Oh, I'm on a spreadsheet.
You made the
like
spreadsheet already, Mary. That's pretty cool.
You're busy. You're so busy. So every month we have a book club, and we're having a special book club gathering for January, where we're going to be going over the January 6th report.
Thank you for not inviting me to that, though.
Well, we only have lawyers. We only have lawyers. Andrew Weissman, George Conway, and I think there's someone else.
Dahlia,
anyway,
probably. Okay.
No, not Dahlia. Sorry, Dahlia. Sorry. Oh, God.
Not Dahlia. Okay, Jen.
Okay, never mind about that. And then February, we're doing back to the
Jen,
regular
seriously.
club. Letter from Birmingham jail. Okay, sorry, Mary. Bye. Thanks.
Gee, I just
Can I talk about my YouTube?
No,
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay, I know. Oh my God, we are totally off the road.
Your spot, Mary. Everybody should join the Nerd Avengers.
Thank you, Brian.
Glad to help.
So
it's a great podcast.
I was trying. I think I was about to say something incredibly profound. No, so it's sort of adding to the conversation that we were having. Sorry. That, we've been talking about the Republican Party. We've been talking about elected Republicans. We've been talking about the structural issues and what's sort of required or allowed in the Republican Party. And we want tarot card woman just for the accent alone, quite honestly. I'm going to invite her on. I really am.
Bobby, mate.
So
sorry, Mary, I have her for the podcast already.
Jesus Christ.
Which one is that? I'm just kidding.
So
don't
get me started. We don't have a lot of time, so I just want to wrap up with this because I think it's important. So we're talking about how these grifters, how these men mostly, but also women who just traffic in the worst kinds of mendacity. They promote the big lie. They engage in revisionist history about what really happened on January 6th and what that meant. And, they deceive a lot of voters. So we have many people in the Republican Party, many constituents in the Republican Party who believe that the election was stolen, who don't understand why January 6th is a big deal. But let's face it, there's a significant portion of Republican voters who don't care about veracity or decency any more than the people they elect to represent them. We see this time after time after time. How the hell is somebody as despicable? Dante needs to keep inventing other circles of hell. How is Greg Abbott reelected with almost 900,000 more votes than Beto O'Rourke, with something like almost 8% more of the vote than Beto O'Rourke, when, after Uvalde, after the electric, almost 700 people were killed because of government greed and incompetence, after SB 8, after he had already been pulling his, I hate calling them stunts because it makes it sound fun, but his absolutely despicable practice of putting immigrants on buses and driving them God knows where. So the fact that all of that happened, he still gets elected overwhelmingly. Like, he kicked Beto O'Rourke's ass.
Yeah, he won by like 12
and now
points
it was a lot. I mean, yes. It was a devastating number. Yes. And so still allowed to be in a position to do what he did this past weekend, which was to put upwards of 50 immigrants on 2 buses, drive them from Texas to Washington, D.C., let them out in front of Vice President Kamala Harris's house. It was 18 fucking degrees out.
Yeah.
First of all, let's leave aside the question, like, why is that legal? Like, why isn't he in prison? But Donald Trump isn't in prison. So I mean, I would like to know it too. But like, Donald Trump literally stole classified documents from the United States government, and he's not in prison. So why should Greg Abbott be in prison? But my point about this is, we need to look to Republican voters too. They're in on it. They approve it. They remind me of the whites during Reconstruction who had so much trouble, whether Republican or Democrat, so much trouble allowing freed Black Americans to participate in the franchise, to have some semblance of a voice in our government, in their government, that they chose to make common cause with traitors.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Look, whoever wants. Okay,
it's
go ahead, Brian.
Appearance versus reality. That's the first thing.
It's what?
It's the appearance versus the reality. And the Republicans are very good at selling you on an appearance and not reality.
But appearance of what?
It's easier to convince someone. It's easier to con someone than to get someone to admit that they've been conned.
But what is the appearance? The
appearance in Texas, and having lived there, and I mean, there was a Secretary of State in Texas in the 90s, in the late 80s, early 90s, who would watch every execution and claimed that made him tough on crime, right? He was a big sissy, but that was his thing. And people bought it. You have a gun. That's why you see guns in so many of their ads. These people in Texas buy into the appearance. Texas was its own country for a while. It's
you mean the myth of rugged individualism?
Yeah, rugged individualism,
macho, toxic masculinity,
all of that. The appearance. Never mind that the reality is we all have to work together. Never mind they claim socialism when they take their kids, use the police, use the roads, take their kids to school, use the hospitals, that are all social programs that we all pay for. The cognitive dissonance is there because the politicians in Texas are very successful at selling you on the appearance that you have to be a rugged individualist, and to do that, you've got to have that gun, you've got to be able to use it. And the reality is they're none of those things. They're like Josh Hawley. As soon as the strife comes, they're doing chariots of fire and running down the hallway.
But Dahlia, right? Yeah. But Dahlia, what's worse about it is that
all hat, no cat. I love that, Jen. Sorry.
That's okay. But the other very troubling part of this is that people don't even understand what's actually happening. According to 8 USC 1158, how's that, Jen Taub? Regarding asylum, people are allowed to come into this country. There's no point of entry specified. They're allowed to make their case without being kidnapped, brought across state lines, and left to freeze. And I don't. So there's that aspect of it as well. It's just it's appearance of toughness, fine, and who cares if the little brown children freeze to death because we're making our point. But they're here legally. So why is this even allowed to happen, and why isn't more made of that?
I mean, they're here illegally, and this was an issue, by the way, for family separation. Remember when it was the same thing, that they were crossing lawfully, seeking asylum lawfully, and then being ripped apart, and their children, many of whom have been lost forever, right?
Yeah.
So this is not new, but I keep coming back to, and maybe this ties something Brian just said to what you just asked, Mary, which is I think that we are in a moment where this myth of scarcity pervades all political discourse, right? The idea that other people are getting stuff that is coming to you. And if I had to, I know we haven't talked about the Supreme Court other than trolling Clarence Thomas, but I will say, like, if I had to find one through line for all the big ticket cases this term so far, whether it's affirmative action, whether it's the Indian Child Welfare Act, whether it's the racial gerrymander in Alabama, these cases are all attempting to say, how dare the Reconstruction Amendments be used against white people?
Yep.
To take away that which I am entitled to, and that the real victims here are white people for 200 years have had everything and now claim scarcity. And I think if you think about, this trope of, it's part of the Great Replacement stuff that Tucker Carlson is peddling every day on his show. It's part of how Donald J. Trump got into office talking about Mexican rapists. It's just the idea that there are limited resources in this country and people who are not us are coming and getting them. And that means we don't have it. And
They're taking our stuff and giving it to them.
Yeah. And I think unless we figure out how to debunk the myth of scarcity, and it's super interesting if you listen to the affirmative action cases at the court, it's quite literally about how white people are entitled to spots at Ivy League schools because they just are.
Yep.
And if you listen to the Indian Child Welfare Act case, it's that white Christians are just entitled to adopt Native American children because they just are. And if we can't think of a way, to debunk that myth and to stop thinking in zero-sum terms about resources, then they are just going to keep winning by making these completely tautological claims about what it is to be an American, because what it is to be an American is always going to be the white guys get everything because they were here first.
Yeah. In other words, to sum up that really beautiful way of putting it, I'll just say, what the fuck, white people? Like, seriously, I'm just, I can't even. Well, Cliff, sorry, we're kind of running out of time, but say something really quick, and
I'll
then
say it in 30 seconds, which is, cool. I think that's okay. I mean, basically, that is the broader project of cultural change that we need, and that is why we suffer so much from right-wing investment in institutions and think tanks and what we don't do, because we need that cultural change to be made. And the only other thing I'll say very quickly is every one of them should be forced to read out loud the parable of the Good Samaritan, because I'd like to be there when they do and claim they're Christian. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, they're not.
That was only 24 seconds.
Okay, well, that's good, because Cliff, you have 6 seconds now. What I'm going to do, I'm going to ask everybody as
I give the balance of my time back to Mary Trump. Sorry.
Can I talk now?
Yeah,
okay, cool.
I think so, man. It's cool. Yeah.
Since this is our last show before the new year begins, please be better. Please be better. Please be better. I want to give everybody a chance to say what they're hoping for in the new year. I don't really believe in resolutions, but I believe in setting intentions, certainly. Not just during the new year, but why not? Good time as any. And if there's anything you're working on that you want to plug, like, I don't know, a podcast about books that has writers on as guests, and except me. So, Brian.
Well, let's see. Be kind to your web-footed friend, for a duck may be somebody's mother. I wish everybody a great new year.
I don't even know what that means, but that sounds
okay.
Cool.
I don't want to.
Just
but
be kind to. I wish for a gentle, more critical thinking and a gentler and kinder nation in the new year. And the only thing and if you're going to talk about immigration, never forget the Simpson-Mazzoli Act and the fact that they're supposed to be prosecuting companies that hire illegal immigrants, and they don't. And the Republicans are really great when they forget that. So that's a little thing. But and then as far as what we're working on the podcast is just ask the question, and the see, I waited till you asked me to plug it, Mary. And then the book is called Free the Press, and I think that I hope in the coming year there's a lot more attention paid to the problems in the press, and we start to correct them.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Cliff, you have 6 seconds. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead, Cliff.
I'll just start personally. Every year, I hope that I can be a better and more tolerant person. It's very difficult because there are some people out there in incredibly bad faith who harm people, and it enrages me. But I always hope to have more grace and more understanding. Okay, now let's kick their fucker. No, I'm just kidding. But I do also, I'll say that my hope for this year is that we did actually have a lot of victories that we didn't expect this year. I hope that some of those lead to positive change next year, that people do more and more see past some of the lies and some of the purposeful division, and are able to remember what America is, and, or we're supposed to be, and how we reach a more perfect union. And otherwise, I'll wish all of you guys, everybody listening and watching, and the best, and my great panelists here. And the only thing I'll promote is my little YouTube channel that I started a couple months ago, just broke 10,000 subscribers. So I'm kind of excited. Please come by and watch. We do some longer form podcasts and shorter takedowns of people who say and do bad things. It's just youtube.com/C for Cliff Schechter. So cool. C Schechter.
Great.
Thank you.
Jen?
Yeah. I feel like I need to make a few corrections, which is, having looked at the comments, Dahlia was my first guest. So her waving her hands in disbelief that she hasn't been invited on is kind of ridiculous. Also, I feel like I need to say the other 2 guests I didn't mention, Jill Wine-Banks and Jennifer Rubin. And what I want to say is what I really miss is from my childhood in the 70s. I miss all the peace signs and the promise of shared prosperity. And, hoping for, as Ferlinghetti would say, a rebirth of wonder.
And the podcast is called
Booked Up with Jen Taub. And you can find it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Ooh, all right then. It's really good. So please, even though I'm not invited onto it, I still highly recommend it. Dahlia?
I'll flack first. The book is Lady Justice, came out this September from Penguin Press, and it very much was a story about some of the people who don't get enough attention or credit. And I think everyone on this podcast reminds me every day that people are working in the trenches really freaking hard to save democracy, and they don't always get mugs and t-shirts, but they're amazing. And I think that maybe just slightly orthogonal but connected is that I think that, one of the real lessons of this year is that there is great generosity and there is a capacity for great goodness. People reacted with such generosity to those busloads of folks who were dropped off in front of the vice president's house this weekend. And so I just want to say, I think we can and should really work to replace this myth of scarcity with the sort of promise of goodness and generosity and plenty, because it's true. And we are capable of it. And I wish for everybody 2023 full of generosity and Jen's wonder, and also prosperity and good health.
Thank you, Dahlia. And I'll just add that I hope. Well, first of all, I posted this on Twitter. My favorite Christmas movie is Santa Claus is Coming to Town, narrated by Fred Astaire, and Mickey Rooney plays Santa Claus. And it has a like a psychedelic music video that could have been written by the guys who did Gumby. I mean, it's got everything. It's got the Meister Burger. It's incredible. And seriously, the penguin. But there's a song called "Put One Foot in Front of the Other," and it's about changing from bad to good. See the whole thing, so I don't have to explain it. It's really great. I still love it. It holds up. And it's and Chris Kringle basically says changing from bad to good is as easy as putting one foot in front of the other. I don't think it's quite that easy, but it's worth shooting for. And one of my many hopes for the new year is that people, given the fact that that the Republicans did horribly in the midterms, people are getting the message. The Supreme Court keeps overstepping. The Republican Party keeps overstepping. I think the cruelty is going to stop playing, or it's going to get other people to pay attention in a way that's going to help us. So we have a while before 2024. So let's take 2023 and please let's focus on our mental health and our physical health. It's been an extraordinarily difficult 6 years, and the last 3 have been at times unspeakable. So, we need all of you. We need all of us too to be well in our minds and in our bodies, and that's what I hope for. And all of you here help me with that. So I wish you all the best, and looking forward to seeing you in 2023.
Love you, Mary.
Love you too. Bye, guys.
Yeah, I love you, Mary. Thank you so much. All of you guys. You're awesome.
All right. Thank you so much for being here with us today for the last Nerd Avengers of 2022, a year I'm very happy to be turning the page on. We couldn't do this without you. So you're tuning in every week and on Thursdays just makes all the difference in the world. So that is it for today. I have to go see my kid now, so we're going to wrap it up. We will be here Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific at youtube.com/Politicon. And we will be back next Tuesday for our first show of 2023. And we're going to kick it off right. That's also at youtube.com/Politicon, 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And while you're on Politicon's YouTube page, please subscribe to Politicon. Like the episode, leave a comment there if you're not watching in real time. And also there's a bell that you can click. And if you press on that bell, you will be notified every time. Oh, there it is. You'll be notified every time a new video drops. Of course, you can listen to the show in podcast form on Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, and leaving a 5-star review really helps other people find the show. So that would be much, much, much appreciated. And that is it until Thursday. So in the meantime, please stay safe and be kind.